Hey everyone, hope you're having a great day today. This PowerPoint goes along with the Industrial Revolution unit. Specifically, it talks about how employers, ones who own factories, ones who own companies, fought back against the emergence of labor unions, which threatened to reduce their profits. And it kind of forced labor unions, as we learned in class before, would force employers to treat workers right, give them benefits, better conditions, and better wages. So let's take a look here, and you want to copy the underlined stuff like we always talk about. First example is a blacklist. This is a list of union supporters would be circulated amongst employers, the ones who own the factories, to make sure that none of those folks who wanted to start a union up or support unions would be hired. This was an effort to try to keep unions out of factories, which again would limit the amount of influence that the employers had and gave the union workers more rights. Secondly, yellow dog contracts. This is a contract that would force a worker not to join a union. Say, for example, if I was getting hired at a factory, they would, in those days, make me sign a yellow dog contract, which would basically say that I agreed not to join a union. Yellow dog contracts are illegal in today's world, but that was a common tactic they would use back in the late 1800s, early 1900s to try to prevent, again, union influence from becoming prevalent within many factories. Lockouts. A lockout may seem like an unusual idea. This is just where employers, the bosses, attempt to bar workers from a plant due to a labor dispute. What can happen is if workers are threatening to walk out on the job and go on strike, one of the ways that the employers might try to combat that is to maybe take a preemptive strike and force and lock them out of the factory. This also is a common tactic during what's called collective bargaining, which is where unions and employers negotiate back and forth for wages, conditions, and whatnot. So if those negotiations aren't going well and the owners don't want to work under the previous contract, they'll basically lock the workers out and keep them from coming to work, hoping that will force them into better terms of a labor agreement. Strike breakers. In many cases, especially in the late 19th century, it was very common for workers to hire replacement workers. So let's say that a group of workers goes out on strike. The employers can't have their work done, because there's no workers to do it. So what would happen is they would hire replacement substitute workers to go in there and work in place of the striking workers. Oftentimes referred to as scabs, these folks were looked down upon by the union workers who were on strike, trying to improve their wages and conditions. These other folks would go in there, these strikers, and just temporarily do their jobs. A lot of times there was violence between the strike breakers and the union members. I wrote down Pinkertons here. There was a famous group called the Pinkertons who would replace striking steel workers, striking coal miners, and were basically available to be hired by owners of factories or mines all across the country back in those days. And then some other simple things. Refusing to recognize union rights, refusing to bargain collectively. Basically, collective bargaining, we had mentioned before, is where the owners of a factory negotiate a deal with the union representatives. In some cases, they just flat out refuse to recognize those union rights. And in other cases, they would even fire union leaders. Say, for example, if I was in charge of a union and I was working a job in a factory or a coal mine, they may just flat out fire me from a union association. Anyways, thank you for your time here. I strongly suggest you copy this stuff into your notes. If you have to go back and pause it or play it again, that's fine. But we will be asking you some more about this material when you come back into class, either Tuesday or Thursday. Hope you have a nice day. Bye.